Okay, everyone, I'd like to call this Rules Committee together. I'd like to call the Rules Committee to order. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Senator Saslaw. Here. Senator Howell.
Here.
Senator Lucas. Senator Edwards. Senator Deeds.
Here.
Senator Marsden.
Here.
Senator Peterson. Here. Senator Barker. Senator Vola. Senator Lewis.
Here.
Senator Norman. Senator McDougall. Senator Vogel. Senator McPike. Senator Locke.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. This afternoon we have, I believe it's 5 pieces of legislation to go through, and I believe we do not have anyone who has signed up to speak on those pieces of legislation, so we will dispense with those in the order in which they appear on our docket. We will begin with Senate Bill 5003. Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 5003 is a bill that I worked on with Madam Chair, the gentlelady from Hampton, to develop what we would call a bipartisan, multiracial, multi-gender commission that will dig into many of the issues that we've been discussing over the past couple days that we've been here. And I guess I would start by saying I've been practicing law for 30 years in an area where I've gotten to see firsthand that there are inequities in our system. And that's not to say we don't have a good system. I think we have the best system in the world, but it is not perfect. And a lot of those inequities stem from race, stem from poverty. Many of them stem from the fact that I believe we've given way too many of our civil liberties away, this lawmaking body, over many, many generations. And my point is we need to do our best to make the system the best we can make it for everybody. And so if you look at this commission that's been set up, it is very diverse. It is represented by groups from every faction, and it deals with a lot of issues that I think are going to take a much more thorough and thoughtful discussion than we can do in a special session. And so my hope was we could develop this, we could take testimony from folks in the public who have experienced certain things, and at the end of the day, we could hopefully enact policies that make our system of justice in Virginia fair to everybody. And that's my bill in a nutshell. I'm happy to ask any questions, answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair.
Senator Howell.
This is not a question or particularly about this bill, but I do want to remind the members of rules that if we pass a resolution or a bill, it will be in the budget. It will not go through finance. It will go directly into the budget. And this one has an estimate of $20,000 to $40,000 a year. So it's minimal.
Madam Chair.
Is that Senator Favola?
Thank you. I certainly support this idea, and I think that Patriot makes a compelling case. My question is, isn't some of the mission described in this bill part of the Crime Commission in a certain sense?
Madam Chair, I actually tried to pick topics that the Crime Commission would not take up. The Crime Commission will have its own agenda, and I didn't want to overlap, but I think that the Rules Committee can certainly amend it to change the topics. I think the Commission itself can change the topics if they so choose, but my intent was not to overlap on the Crime Commission.
Madam Chair, could we
if you
make
look-
that explicit?
If you look at the very beginning, the first paragraph under 68, the biggest responsibility is to assess compliance with the rights afforded to the citizens under the constitutions of the United States and the Commonwealth, which is very important because we have given our civil liberties away in many respects. We need to talk about issues like stop and frisk and temporary detentions and pretextual stops and things like that that I don't think the Crime Commission is going to take up.
Madam Chair, I am going to move that we report this bill, but I would like an articulation that the expectation is it's to take up issues that are separate from the Crime Commission. If there's a way of articulating that.
Madam Chair.
I believe that's Senator Peterson.
Yes, and I'm reading the text of the bill and looking at the composition of the commission. And I noticed that it talks about members of the Senate, the House of Delegates, chiefs of police, Commonwealth's attorneys, a member of the African American Advisory Board, a current president of the NAACP, chief diversity equity officer, and goes on. And there are other, I just feel like this is a commission if we're going to have it. And I realize I'm not trying to say all groups are in the same context in Virginia history. They're certainly not. But I represent a district that's 25% Asian. And I don't ever see them get sort of have a representative on any group. And again, I'm not saying that they're in the same position, but I think it's important that if we're going to talk about inclusivity and diversity, I think we've got to be a little bit more inclusive and diverse of ourselves. So I'm not making an amendment. Maybe this will come to the floor, but I would like to see somebody out of another minority community that's not articulated here. Maybe that's a floor amendment. I'll add it at a later time. But I do support the bill.
Madam Chairman. McDougall.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, just briefly, my concern is in creating another commission. It looks like a number of the things that are particularly in that item 1, after you go through little I, are things that are contemplated and addressed through DCJS in a bill that passed out of courts yesterday. So I have some concerns about whether we're sitting duplication as far as reviewing these processes or not. So at this juncture, I'm probably not going to be in favor of moving forward until we see how the legislation moves through the process. Certainly, if we were trying to come to solutions, going through a process of evaluating before, but if we're passing bills that already carry out the solutions, then I'm not sure what the benefit of creating a commission once we've made the decision is.
Thank you, Senator McDougall. Are there other questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
I will move to report, Madam Chair.
It's been moved and seconded that we report Senate Bill 5003. Please call the roll.
Senator Saslaw, Senator Howe, Senator Lucas, Senator Lucas, Hey, Nathan. Senator Edwards? I'm sorry, I could not hear you.
Pass for the time being. I'm trying to figure it out.
Senator Deeds? Senator Marsden? Senator Peterson? Senator Barker? Senator Favola? Senator Lewis? Senator Norman? Senator McDougal? Senator Vogel? Senator McPike? Senator Locke?
Aye.
Abstain, me too.
Twelve 12 ayes, 1 no, 2 abstentions. The bill's reported.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will now move to Senate Bill 5045. Senator Surville.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senate Bill 5045 is a pretty straightforward bill. I do have a couple line amendments that I would move that Mr. Wade's prepared. I'm sorry, I can't move them. Maybe somebody in the committee can move them. I can explain them if the amendments, if anybody needs me to.
I move the bill, Senate Bill 5045. Is
Moving
not-
the amendments?
Huh?
He has a line amendment.
You want me to explain the line amendments?
You referring to line amendments, Senator Surville?
Yes. I can explain them if that would help. Madam Chair, would you like me to explain the amendments?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the bill itself basically would create what you might call a reverse Woodrum impact. That is, if there's an impact statement. So if there's a bill that either repeals a crime or reduces a punishment, it would require the Department of Planning and Budget, Criminal Sentencing Commission to prepare a statement showing the net positive impact on the state budget. What the line amendments do is require the bill to be reenacted next year in order to be effective. And then there's a second enactment which would authorize the Chair of Senate Finance and the Chairman of House Appropriations to designate 2 bills each to be evaluated consistent with this criteria for the 2021 session. The reason for those amendments is we've spoken to the administration and they're concerned that DPB and the Sentencing Commission don't have staff that are skilled at doing these types of analyses yet, and they would sort of like to put their toe in the water before committing whole hog to this policy concept. And in addition, if they were to score every single bill this way that comes through, it would probably require a lot of additional staff. So they wanted to do this sort of as a pilot, or they're willing to do this as a pilot and see how it goes. And then after we see how the statements look, come back and do it again next year. So that's what the bill does. And that's actually what the line amendments, the 2 enactment clauses that I proposed do that are before you in a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move the amendments.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the line amendments. All in favor, please say aye.
I
Any
move the
opposition?
bill I move that we report the bill as amended.
Second.
Madam Chairman. Surville.
Senator Surville.
Madam Chair, I want to say that my suspicion is that the Finance Committee might want to look at this, but that's up to Madam Chairman, but that...
Madam Chair, bills that come out of rules do not go to finance.
Oh, okay.
But I would also just like to briefly state, I really like this concept and had started exploring doing it on my own, but was informed by J. Lark and others that it's really difficult to do that kind of analysis. But I like this idea of just doing a couple to see how very difficult it is and whether we can make some savings as a result.
Senator Norman.
It goes over my head, and I apologize for my idiocy. Why are we doing this?
Madam Chairman, I'm happy to address it.
Senator Serva.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I would say the reason we're doing this is because right now, whenever a statute is repealed or a punishment is reduced, we don't know how much money that is actually saved. So to give the senator an example, last year I introduced legislation to repeal the death penalty along with senator from the junior senator from Richmond, and the fiscal impact statement we got back on it said it was going to cost taxpayers $60,000 to repeal the death penalty because we're going to have to house 2 people an extra 2 years, when in fact getting rid of the Capital Defender Service would actually save us about $4 million a biennium. Likewise, I know we have the sentence credit bill that we're discussing right now. Last year that was introduced in another body. The fiscal impact statement on that bill came out, I think, at $12 million, even though the savings for incarcerating the people affected by the bill would amount to probably hundreds of millions of dollars. So these fiscal impact statements often do not reflect the positive fiscal impacts of some of the policy judgments we make, and they tend to sort of give us partial information. And as we continue to explore this concept of looking at our criminal justice system, we thought it was important to try and get better, more complete, objective information about the complete fiscal impact, especially the positive fiscal impact these policy choices make before we make our decisions.
Madam Chairman.
Senator Norman.
Thank you very much. I think the motion before us is to recommend passing the bill, which will not go to Senate Finance. And I appreciate the gentleman's explanation because it just persuaded me why I cannot support the bill. It is very apparent, based on that explanation, that this even pilot program is going to be used to try to justify the promotion of the elimination of some punishments that we've had a spirited debate on before. And it appears to me that this is not just policy oriented, but is the underpinnings of a future political discussion. And because it is avoiding the Senate Finance Committee, I think it is a bad idea.
Further discussion on the motion to report.
Madam Chair.
Senator Favola.
I think there is some value, however, in trying to get to not just the cost, but also benefits of a policy statement that we may pass in terms of legislation. So this would be a piece of information in the policy discussion, as the esteemed minority leader pointed out, but I think it's valuable information. So for that reason, I'm going to support this bill.
Any additional discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Sasslaw. Senator Howe. Senator Lucas. Aye. Senator Edwards.
Aye.
Senator Deeds.
Aye.
Senator Marsden. Aye. Senator Peterson. Aye. Senator Barker. Aye. Senator Favola. Aye. Senator Lewis. Aye. Senator Norman. No. Senator McDougall. Senator Vogel. Yeah. Senator McPike. Aye. Senator Locke. 12 ayes, 3 noes. The bill is reported.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Senate Bill 5045 is reported. We will We will now move to Senate Bill 5047. Senator Norman.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. This bill is fairly straightforward and fundamental. You will recall that a number of years ago that we created the Capital Square Preservation Council and articulated powers and responsibilities that were contained in that. And if you look at the statute, the proponents of it thought it had been written fairly comprehensively, especially in paragraph 4. It indicated they would review all plans and proposals for alterations, improvements, additions, renovations, or other disposition that is structural or architectural in nature. As a result of probably my naivete ever since I first came to the Senate, I always thought that the old House chambers was actually a museum, and that it was a museum that included a number of artifacts that reflected the history of the Commonwealth of Virginia and some of the historical events that took place there. What the bill that I have proposed includes a new paragraph 5, which I mistakenly thought had been encompassed in the original bill, but obviously was not. And what I was seeking to do was to more clearly articulate. And what that paragraph 5 is: review and approve all plans or proposals for alterations, improvements, additions, or renovations to include the disposition of any monuments, statutes, artwork, or other historical artifacts. And it just seems to me that it is consistent with the mandate of this council that we created, who does not have a partisan agenda about them, and that they are merely preservationists in their focus. So that's the purpose of the bill.
Are there any questions with regard to Senate Bill 5047? Senator Lewis. Can't hear you, Senator Lewis.
There it is. What is the current composition of the commission?
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I might defer to Madam Clerk, who works more closely with that group than I do.
Yes, sir.
There are all citizen members except the Secretary of Administration, the Clerk of the Senate, and the Clerk of the House. There are representatives from the Virginia Museum, the Architects of Virginia, landscape architects, and the Garden Club of Virginia, and there's one other group. I can't remember exactly what the group was, but they're all citizen members, some appointed by the Senate, some by the House, and some by the governor.
Are there other questions?
I would move to report, Madam Chair.
There was a motion to report. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 5047 be reported. Additional discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Saslaw? Senator Howe? Senator Lucas?
Aye.
Senator Edwards?
Aye.
Senator Deeds?
Yes.
Senator Marsden? Aye. Senator Peterson? Aye. Senator Barker? Aye. Senator Favola? Aye. Senator Lewis? Aye. Senator Norman?
Aye.
Senator McDougal? Aye. Senator Vogel? Aye. Senator McPike? Aye. Senator Locke? Aye. 15 ayes, 0 noes. Bills reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
We will now move to Senate Bill 5091, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senate Bill 1591 is an attempt for Virginia to assess where our children are after they have had the disruption in education that has occurred with the COVID crises. In Virginia now, individual school districts have contracts that have been negotiated at a reduced rate by the Department of Education to have assessment tools. In fact, they're using 11 different tools across the state of Virginia to have assessment tools so that kids can be measured at their proficiency rate, so that as we move forward, they can then, we can determine growth measures to help them achieve back to grade level performance as we go forward. The challenge is that these same school districts that are disadvantaged with higher at-risk populations and less revenue in the divisions don't have the capacity to do this. And this is possibly the most important, these are possibly the most important school districts where we have to measure that, performance so that they can move forward and we make sure we don't lose a considerable number of our children, because we all know if they don't meet the educational benchmarks as they move forward, then they don't succeed in graduating from high school or obtaining degrees and participating in society. So, Madam Chairman, in conversation with Department of Education, the idea was that money from the COVID Relief Fund would be very appropriately used here to allow the at-risk school divisions that don't have the capacity to do this testing like the more wealthy to have funds from the state in order to evaluate those children. So that is the intent. It's ended up here in rules, and I think that has something to do with its fiscal impact and our ability to access the COVID relief fund. But I think this is something really important that we need to discuss while we're here. And it is COVID relief, a relief that's very much needed. And I hope we're going to find a way to do this for Virginia's kids, because we can't just assume they're okay and not measure it. We have to measure in order to improve. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Donovan. Senator Deeds.
Madam Chair, one question for what is the fiscal impact? Has there been an arrangement made with the administration to direct CARES fund to this?
Madam Chairman, if that was a question for me, I could not hear. If you would repeat
and I
it.
apologize, my mic was off. The question was, what is the fiscal impact, and has there been any arrangement with the administration to direct some of the CARES funding for to this purpose?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have discussed this with the Department of Education. They did not have a fiscal impact when I spoke with them. It's hard to measure because I think that the intent was for them to propose a pot of money to be used to initiate this in the next few months and then reevaluate what the actual need was, you know, in comparison to the school districts that were able to afford it. But I have not been given a fiscal impact. I believe that Madam Chairman of Finance has. And so I'm not sure it's a realistic one, but it's the one she's been given.
Madam Chair.
Senator Howell.
Thank you. We don't have an official fiscal impact statement on the bill, but we had a similar bill last session, Senate Bill 367, that was continued till next year. And that bill had a fiscal impact of $1.8 to $2.4 million each year. Which is, of course, money we don't have.
All right. Madam Chair,
Senator Peterson.
I'm going to resume my role as the Dark Prince. Again, I think this is important, and I think my own children would probably benefit from this. But again, if we open the door to new spending, we're never going to close it. So I would move that we gently pass this by and take it up in January.
It's been moved and seconded that we pass by Senate Bill 5091 indefinitely. Is there additional discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Howell. Senator Lucas.
Aye.
Senator Edwards. Senator Deeds. Senator Marsden. Senator Peterson. Senator Barker. Senator Favola.
Aye.
Senator Lewis. Senator Norman. Senator McDougal. Senator Vogel. Senator McPike. Senator Locke. 12 ayes, 3 noes. The bill is PBI'd.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Senator Donovan. Our final bill is Senate Joint Resolution 5001. Senator Peake.
Excuse me. Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Senate Joint Resolution 5001 stems from the extended period that we have been in a declared state of emergency. Several bills are introduced to rein in the governor's authority to keep us in a sustained period of a state of emergency. But this joint resolution seeks to address it now. We went into a state of emergency more than 5 months ago. At the time that we went into that state of emergency, there was a fear nationwide. Everyone was concerned that our hospitals would be overrun, that the illness would spread quickly. We would not be able to treat them. We would not have ventilators to treat the sick people. And so we went into a state of emergency along with most other states. We have addressed this state of emergency. Our hospitals have not been overrun. Our ventilators have not been overrun. We do not have mass shortages that were feared at the time we entered into this state of emergency. And the purpose of Senate Joint Resolution 5001 is to bring us out of this state of emergency. We have been governed by executive order for the past 5 months. These executive orders have affected every aspect of life in the Commonwealth. And the General Assembly has had no ability whatsoever to address these wide and sweeping mandates from the governor's office affecting everything that we do. Senator from Fairfax, Senator Peterson, filed a lawsuit challenging some of these executive orders and what the governor has closed. We do not need to be governed by executive order now. We are now in session. The General Assembly can do its job. The legislators who represent the people, who are closest to the people, we can do our job. We can address legislation. It is time to end the state of emergency. It is time for us to quit being governed by executive order. We are equal partners in running the Commonwealth of Virginia. We propose the laws. They get voted on. They get passed. The governor signs them or does not sign them. We are not governed by the governor with laws that are passed down from him and control the people. This resolution reasserts a three-pronged state of governance: the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. And I think this resolution restates that, reasserts the powers, the separation of powers, and I hope the body will pass it.
Thank you, Senator Peake. Are there any questions with regard to Senate Joint Resolution 5001?
Madam Chair,
Senator Favola.
I don't have a question, but I have serious concerns with the resolution. I think when you're in the middle of a public health crisis, things can change very quickly. Actions need to be taken so lives can be saved. Virginia has done a fairly good job compared to other states of containing the pandemic. We certainly haven't eradicated it. There's not a vaccine yet. In fact, as of today, our 7-day moving average is 928 new cases. We're about on the cusp of schools beginning to either reopen or open partially. Colleges are debating whether students should come back into their dorms. People are returning from vacations. Some may have practiced social distancing, some may not have. Many epidemiologists believe that we, in fact, might be on the cusp of suffering another serious uptick in the number of COVID cases. The management of this public health emergency best rests with the governor. And I would say this if we had a Republican governor as well. I think certain things have to be taken into consideration. Actions need to happen quickly. And I want to ensure that Virginia always has that executive tool at the governor's disposal so Virginians can be kept safe. I move that we PBI this.
Madam Chair?
It's been moved and seconded that the bill be passed by indefinitely, but I hear someone.
I have a
Senator
question. I have a question of the patron. We're not with the patron yield for a question. The question is this: this really doesn't do anything. It just simply is the way I read it. The governor should continue to urge vulnerable individuals to take appropriate action and while permitting businesses to reopen. But it doesn't require anything. It's just urging the governor to basically ask people to do the right thing, and that's all it does, right?
Madam Chair and Senator Edwards, yes, you're correct. My original intention was to bring a resolution that would where we'd have had the opportunity to bring us out of this declared state of emergency. We were advised by legislative services that that was unconstitutional, violation of our control over the governor's powers, and I don't want to do anything that's unconstitutional. So the best that we could do was this resolution stating it's our desire to not be governed by executive orders, to be governed by the General Assembly, for us to do our legislative function, and that the emergency as it stands has passed now that we're 5 months into it, that colleges, school systems, school boards, localities, businesses are the right people to make the choices at this point to require masks, to require distancing. It's now time to turn it back over to the citizens and not be governed by executive order.
Madam Chair, a comment on the motion to PBI. I support the motion for these reasons. The fact is, this pandemic is a moving target. It's kind of like a wildfire. You put out the fire here, and you go and put out a fire there, and the next thing you know, it pops up somewhere else. That's what's happening. You don't know where it's going to pop up. In Roanoke, we were doing pretty well until some people went to Myrtle Beach and came back, and all of a sudden started popping up. Galax, for example, a small community, has more people who all of a sudden, overnight, got this pandemic, coronavirus, more people on a per capita basis than Fairfax County did. I saw on television that Yuan in China, which is where it all started, they're fine now because they followed the directions, they followed the rules. Well, what's happening is Americans don't follow the rules very well, and we try to get a control of this by requiring people to do X, Y, and Z. People don't do it, and the next thing you know, it pops up again. I think we're right smack in the middle of this. I saw the University of North Carolina tried to reopen the University of North Carolina University, and after 8 days or whatever, they shut it down again. Now it's all remote. Nobody's going to go there live. Notre Dame this morning decided after a week or so that's not working. Michigan State University decided it's not working. So I think we need somebody on top of it on a daily basis, and that's the governor. He's doing his job, and I think we should continue supporting the governor to make sure that he's on top of it on a regular daily basis. The idea that we got it fixed is just not the case. We're completely misunderstanding the nature of this pandemic. It's continuing, it's getting worse and worse, and who knows if until we get a vaccine rather, it's not clear that we're going to ever get out of this. So I think we ought to keep the status quo, and therefore I support the motion to PBI the bill.
Gentleman, yield for a question.
Senator Peterson.
I would ask if my colleague from Roanoke City would yield for a question.
I'll be happy to yield.
You said I'd ask the gentleman, you're not sure if we'd ever get out of this. That being the case, is it your understanding that these executive orders could last forever?
Well, I think in answer to the question, we don't know when we're going to get out of this. It looks like, and not until we get a vaccine, maybe a year from now. And you need somebody on top of it that can deal with the issues on a daily basis. It pops up here, it's down there. I mean, people are saying in Southwest Virginia, let's let the localities make these decisions. Well, that's fine until all of a sudden you get somebody who comes back from Las Vegas or somewhere and goes and visits their nearest and dearest friends who visit their nearest and dearest friends. And next thing you know, you have a pop-up hotspot because that's the nature of this virus. That's the problem with it. I'm sure the governor doesn't want to have any more obligations than necessary, but I want somebody on top of it on a regular daily basis. We're not here very often. Last time we were here was April the 22nd. Now we're here for a week or two. We don't know how long it's going to be. 140 of us can't get together and figure out what's going on. That's why you have an executive with these kinds of emergency powers. So I think we should continue the emergency powers of the governor.
Madam Chair, speak to the motion at the appropriate time.
Senator Peterson.
Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I don't want to trespass too far on your time, but I agree with my colleague from Amherst County. The bottom line is we're a freely elected legislature. We're dealing with a pandemic which has now lasted 6 months. It may last 60 months. And at some point, we have to resume the role of democracy, which is allowing people those civil liberties that they're entitled to under the Virginia Constitution, including Article 1, Section 11, the right to not be deprived of your private property without due process. That includes the right to operate your business and not have that right shut down without due process. Now, I understand what an emergency is. It's defined in Title 44 of the Virginia Code as a time when the legislature cannot be called into session because it's of too brief a nature. And this has typically, historically, been defined as being some type of natural disaster or some type of civil unrest where the governor had to move immediately. That is no longer the case with this pandemic. Now, there is nothing that prevents us from meeting as a legislature and vesting the chief executive with this authority. But allowing him to seize it unilaterally basically makes us no different from the Chinese government, which is not a democracy. So I understand this is a pandemic. It may be raging out of control. I think if you look at the mortality statistics, right now we should typically be about 35,000 deaths. We're at 38,000. We're a population of 8.6 million. So the bottom line is the governor probably has done a pretty good job. The chief executive, the executive branch probably has done a pretty good job. But this nation exists today because of the concept of freedom. And I do believe at some point we have to vest the freedom back to the people that elected us. And so I'm going to vote against the motion. And again, I apologize for trespassing on your time.
Madam Chair, Lewis back here.
Senator Lewis.
Madam Chair, speaking briefly to the motion, I'm going to vote for the motion, but I'm going to, conversely, I'm going to associate myself in many respects with the remarks just made by my colleague from Fairfax, Senator Peterson. And I don't know what the status is of Senator Newman's bill, but I look forward, hopefully, to having a discussion on that. The reason I'm going to vote for this motion is I sort of read this resolution as sort of rescinding the public health emergency, and I'm not so sure that that's an appropriate sentiment to express right now. But I have a lot of concerns and have had a lot of concerns with our obligation as legislators to assert ourselves in this process. And I think, and I hope it doesn't become a partisan, largely a partisan discussion, because I don't think it should be. I think we have an obligation to assert ourselves. And as the gentleman from Fairfax said, this is going on for a number of months now. And while we are a citizen legislature, I think we have proved, at least this week and hopefully next week and hopefully not much longer than that, then we can convene. And maybe we do invest the governor with some powers or give our imprimatur to what he has done in the meantime. But democracy is messy, it's inefficient, but it's the best system in the world, and we have to face these crises, whether it's a public health emergency or a natural disaster, with some semblance of due regard to our democratic institutions and processes. And again, I think it's incumbent upon us as members of the Senate and members of the Virginia legislature to assert our role and our authority in every decision-making process, whether it's in the time of a state of emergency or otherwise. But For the reasons stated, I'm going to vote for the motion to PBI, but again, I have some reservations that I hope we can discuss if and when Senator Newman's bill comes before us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lewis. Any further discussion on the motion?
Madam Chair, Senator Barker.
Senator Barker?
Yes, I agree with the sentiments that have been expressed by the senator from Arlington, Senator Favola, about how well this has been handled. And we are, if you look at all the East Coast states between Florida and Massachusetts, we have the best results of any of those states over the duration of the pandemic. We have handled things well, and I think there's been a collaborative process within the administration and working with legislators and others to be able to manage the situation. And I agree with the senator from Roanoke, Senator Edwards, that we have a situation here right now where we need to make sure that there is an opportunity to be able to have a leadership from the administration and moving forward on things, and with the ability to be able to change course. Certainly early on in the process, Northern Virginia has a little less than 30% of the state population. We had 70% of the cases. And there were major efforts made in Northern Virginia to focus on things, and we are now less than our share of the population in terms of the incidence of new cases of COVID-19. When we brought our rates down in Northern Virginia, one of the things that happened was that there was a huge spike in the Hampton Roads area. That is now being addressed, and there's starting to be some indication that that is working, and we need to have the flexibility of leaders to be able to implement these types of things so that we stay on top of things and don't let it overwhelm us. And I think it would be a mistake to move forward with this resolution at this time.
Thank you, Senator Barker. Any additional discussion? If not, this will be a voice vote. All those in favor of PBI and SJR 5001, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. SJR 5001 will be passed by indefinitely. That exhausts our agenda for the Rules Committee. We have no further issues to discuss, so our meeting will be adjourned.